This word in your ear is brought to you thanks to NordVPN. And VPN stands for what, Mark Hillen?
I'm here to tell you it's Virtual Private Network.
Say it again.
That's Virtual Private Network.
And that is a way to keep your data safe on the internet whenever you're logging in, either at home or probably even more applicably, abroad. VPN protects your identity and encrypts your data so that nobody can steal that identity. And at the same time, there's a fun part. It enables you to access the internet via servers in more than 50 different countries. And that means you can often sidestep region restrictions and stream movies and TV programs from all around the world. And I was actually doing this week, Mark, when the sad news came through of the death of Bernard Cribbins. And I felt there was only one way I could possibly pay tribute to the great man, of whom more later, which was by looking at Swedish Netflix, where they have a wonderful cache of great black and white British comedy films from the 50s and 60s. And what I watched was Two-Way Stretch, once again. A Two-Way Stretch, for those who don't know, it opens, just to talk about the opening for a second. It's in a prison, and sharing a cell, you have Peter Sellers playing Dodger Lane. David Lodge playing Jelly Knight.
It's so good, isn't it?
And finally, the much-loved Bernard Cribbins playing
Lenny the Dip Price.
Lenny the Dip Price.
I was 6 when this came out. We went to see it in the Aldershot Odeon. God, I remember it.
And it opens with the wall of the prison and a horse and cart coming down. A milkman is driving a horse and cart below the prison walls. And when he gets under the cell, he whistles up. And they send down from the cell a basket on a rope. And into the basket he places the day's provisions, which are, of course, bread, eggs, a copy of the Investor's Chronicle for Peter Sellers, and finally the milk. They haul it up. And there's the great Bernard Cribbins hauling it through the window with his wonderful, sad face. God, he had a wonderful, sad clown's face.
It can look lugubrious, can't it?
Absolutely. And what does he say? He looks in the contents of the basket and goes, They've sent ordinary milk again. They know we have gold top. So isn't that blissful?
So
and the whole film is like that.
That film, for anybody who hasn't seen it, the plot very simply is that they're in jail and they plan to break out of jail, carry out a felony, a theft, and then break back into jail because then they'll have the perfect alibi they didn't do it because they're in jail the whole time. Genius.
It's genius. There is not
Irene Handel, Beryl Reid.
There is not a second of that film that isn't genius.
It's
Don't
good.
talk to me about The Godfather. Don't talk to me about Last Year in Marienbad. All that kind of stuff. Don't even talk to me about Citizen Kane. Two-way stretch.
Two-way stretch will not disappoint.
It will absolutely not disappoint.
Every syllable.
So there it was on Swedish Netflix. So anyway, back to NordVPN. You can take advantage of a deal where you can try NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com/yourear, or just use the code YourEar to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 1 additional month for free. And also a bonus gift. And it's risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Full details in the show notes below.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
We're going to start with the Stackwaddy game, which is actually supplied by listener Paul Jackson. And we're going to see how this works because he sent some clues to me to put to you, Mark.
And he sent some to me to put to you.
There you go. I'll go first. And so these are, 5 film stars who have made albums, not soundtracks or cast recordings. They've actually made albums. But one of them is fictitious. Okay, are you ready?
You mean it's a fictitious film star, or
One of them has made an album.
Yeah, yeah.
So here we go. Robert Downey Jr.,
Yep.
Joe Pesci,
Yep.
Judi Dench,
That's unimaginable. Judi Dench. Go on.
Hugh Laurie,
Yeah.
and Scarlett Johansson. Robert Downey Jr., Joe Pesci, Judi Dench, Hugh Laurie, and Scarlett Johansson.
That's
those?
Good.
Which of those has not made an album?
God, well, Hugh Laurie obviously has, because I've seen him. I saw him and his blues band playing at the Latitude Festival, I think it was once.
He made a record quite not long ago.
Yeah, I thought
Let
it
Them
was quite
Talk,
good.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Let Them Talk.
Scarlett Johansson, I suspect, has, because I know she sings.
She's made two.
She's made two. She's made two. Okay. So we've got three left. Judi Dench. That is unimaginable, isn't it? Judi Dench. What would it be? It would be kind of old folk tunes or something. I don't know. I'll come back to her. Robert Downey Jr. I think will have done, because he's just a bit rock and roll, isn't he? And I think he might have a few tattoos, and he probably fancies himself with a Telecaster. So I'm saying he just has. Joe Pesci, it's between the two, isn't it? I'm saying Judi Dench hasn't.
Yeah, you'll be absolutely correct.
Oh, right, okay.
Because Robert Downey Jr. made an album called The Futurist. Joe Pesci has made three.
Oh my God, you're kidding!
Yeah, I think because I think he's a proper singer. Actually,
right.
He's one of those guys. He's a sort of all-round entertainer. Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
He made a record called Little Joe Sure Can Sing, and one called Vincent LaGuardia Bambino Sings Just for You, and there's another one as well. I can't remember what the third one's called. So Hugh Laurie, Scarlett Johansson, Robert Downey Jr., Joe Pesci. But Judi Dench, although she will have featured on loads of kind of soundtrack albums, cast recordings and so forth, nothing in her own right.
Nothing in her own right.
You win on that one.
Oh,
okay,
well,
over to you.
Okay. Well, Paul sent me one for you too. And this was musicians who've starred in movies, but not as themselves or as unnamed cameos. And one of these is a ringer. One of them didn't. So which of these musicians has not appeared in a film as either themselves or an unnamed cameo? Keith Richards, Kenny Rogers, Britney Spears, Cher, David Lee Roth.
Well, Cher definitely has.
Cher loads, yes. Yeah,
sorry, Keith Richards, Cher,
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, yes. Kenny Rogers has appeared in films.
Britney Spears. Kenny Rogers has.
Yeah, sure.
He appeared as Brewster Baker in Six Pack.
Yes.
And the pilot in Long Shot. I've checked this.
Keith Richards is in Pirates of the Caribbean film.
He is. You know, I thought that was the ring because I thought he appeared as himself, but no, he's there kind of completely ripping off, as far as I can see, the Johnny Depp look. But yeah. So, no, he's Captain Teague in At World's End and Stranger Tides.
So I'm going to say the one who hasn't is Britney Spears.
No, Britney Spears has. No, Britney Spears has appeared in a couple of TV movie series things. One as Abby in How I Met Your Mother, and she was in an episode of Will and Grace as Amber Louise. No, the ringer is David Lee Roth, who apparently played himself in an episode of The Sopranos, but hasn't had a kind of acting role. That's good, isn't it?
Well, thanks very much.
Good work from Paul Jackson.
To Paul Jackson. If anybody's got any ideas, actually, if you just email Alex, so just at the word in your ear site or something, and then Alex can make sure that we get the clues separately, because it doesn't work if we both know what the question's.
He sent a very sweet PS to his email. He said, "By the way, whenever I need a good giggle, I often listen back to the round that you once did, which was death metal band or IKEA furniture, if only to hear David Hepworth losing it." It's brilliant. He says apparently you just go to hysterics, and he says this cheers him up on a regular basis. So hurrah! Very good.
I'd like to feel we're performing public service in these difficult times.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
So I've just got back from Holes in France with our little gang and the granddaughter. It was very exciting. And we're all lying around in our little sun lounges around the pool reading. And they're all reading, I say, reading quite improving stuff, actually. One of my sons was reading Flaubert. That's good work, isn't it?
Crikey. What, in French or...?
No, in English. No, in French. That would have been good. But I'm rather ashamed to say that I was rereading. I'm not ashamed to talk because it seems lowbrow, but it's just, my contention is this is This is, I think, the funniest memoir ever written, and it's Clive James' Unreliable Memoirs.
I thought you were going to talk about Morrissey for a second. But no, okay, Clive James, Unreliable
The
Memoirs.
Morrissey one is pretty funny, actually, isn't it? Oh, Lord.
But not as funny as Clive James.
Oh,
Unreliable,
Lord. No.
Which is the first, well, it's the first volume, isn't it, of his...
Morrissey, the bit where he doesn't win the running race at school and his father sort of tells him he's a failure. Oh, it's frightful. No, and also the first 6 pages of the Morrissey book, I think, have no punctuation or no paragraphs, something annoying anyway. Dear. No, but no, the Clive James Unreliable Memoirs, it's got one gag, really, and that gag is massively exaggerate everything, isn't it? You take the truth. I mean, some of it's presumably fictional. I mean, he's just got good stories and he's just telling them, but they're based broadly on things that happened in his early life. But you just take anything and you just inflate it with as much hot air as possible. And the more exaggerated it gets, the more over the top, the funnier it gets. And I love that. Danny Baker's a bit like that, actually. Danny Baker's, I think, quite influenced by him. And I really, really like that. There's a bit where he's eating this, he's in a cinema and he's about 6. They talk about all the different sweets they have. And he's eating this kind of honeycomb chocolate, he said, and it would shatter into bright orange shrapnel. It's so lovely. There's a Christmas dinner where his grandpa gets a sixpence stuck in his throat from the Christmas pud, and grandma administers a Heimlich manoeuvre, and it flies out of his mouth like a bullet and ricochets off a tureen. You just know it's probably never happened.
But Mark, now that's
Doesn't matter.
The mark of a master storyteller. There is the key word. Is I've put it to you, Millard.
Well, there's two. It's tureen. It's tureen is the one
is
really.
Funny.
It's just
because
brilliant.
if
you hear a ping. It's absolutely fantastic.
What you can hear. And of course, I read it years ago when it first came out. How long ago is that? And
God, it came out when he was 40, so would that be, well, probably about, poor old boy passed away quite recently, so about 40 years ago, 1980, around then.
Something like that. And I made the mistake that many people made of thinking they could read Unreliable Memoirs on the tube. Of course, you simply couldn't,
do it.
because you would come to a bit that, no matter how surrounded you were with odiferous, commuters, you would just have to burst into laughter. And the bit that used to do it to me is, of course, the tale of the dunny man.
Oh, the dunny man is fantastic.
The dunny man who turns up to empty the contents of their lavatory, in suburban Melbourne or wherever he is.
And Clive, aged 6 or 7, has left his bike out, hasn't he?
And somebody trips over it. I'm not going to spoil it. But when I read the bit about the dunny man, I just burst out laughing on the Piccadilly line. Absolutely crowded with fellow commuters. And it still does it to me now if I have to read any of it.
I couldn't wait to reread it. It's brilliant. And I mean, just a couple of little moments in it is when there's an accident involving the contents of the dunny. And he says the air was filled with a gravid hum. He said, the flies came. He said, they came from all over Australia. I got one more line which I thought was just so funny.
Sorry, it's the break. It's they came.
They came.
They came from
all over Australia. Just builds it up.
I don't know if anybody's had this. I mean, your children, your boys are kind of storytellers. Certainly, one of them is professionally a storyteller, isn't it? So he understands this. Mine, not quite the same. And they always used to say to me at school when they had to do creative writing or whatever, all that kind of nonsense. They used to say, it's all right for you, funny things happen to you. And I used to say, it's nothing to do with whether anything funny happens to you. It's to do with whether you can make it funny.
Exactly. And the great thing about Clive James, he never uses exclamation marks, which actually deflates anything, because it says, I'm trying to be funny. It's just that lovely flat tone.
Yes.
It's a lovely flat tone, which I really like.
Anyway,
so I'll give you one more, just one more. It's brilliant. When he's at school, he's at the Sydney Technical College, and he's in the sports team. And they win the Pepsi Cola Shield. And I just think it's such a good line. It says, it didn't sound like much of an achievement. In fact, it was less of an achievement than it sounded, since the teams we defeated looked like pages from a UNESCO pamphlet about the ravages of vitamin deficiency. It's just so great. pages from a pamphlet. Every single syllable of that is
But it's also
fantastic.
the ravages of vitamin deficiency. That's P.G. Wodehouse, isn't it? Put
Yeah.
the funny bit right at the end of
Yeah,
the line.
absolutely. Yeah.
So it builds up until you get to the end and you release the laughter at the end.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about holiday reading. And I'll say what I was thinking about. And that's often the greatest stuff on holiday reading is that it's the least exalted stuff possible. Actually, I tend to read kind of heavy books during the year. On holiday, I don't really. I read
No.
light stuff very.
Absolutely.
And I remember one holiday years ago. My wife and I had before children, and we were staying in Corfu, and it was about a mile walk to the nearest store. And I used to set off in the middle of the afternoon in the broiling heat and make my way to this store where there would be a few provisions. And then there would be a sun-bleached spinner rack of imported fiction on which sat pretty much the entire collected works of Agatha Christie.
Oh.
And what I used to do is just buy one every afternoon and then go back and read it and have it finished by the same time the following
That's
afternoon.
wonderful.
And then I would just go up and buy another one, Murder at the Vicarage or,
Yeah.
Mysterious Affair at Styles or God knows what. And I just found it absolutely perfect.
That is a dream. That's how holidays should be spent. I'm sure you've seen, because we talked about it the other day, the Barack Obama summer reading list.
Oh,
and the music playlist. And he posts
to which
these
we
every now
say,
and again.
Barack, oi, give us a break.
Give us a break. It is unbearable. It's the most achingly self-conscious thing, possibly arrived at with a team of experts and advisors
definitely.
to make absolutely sure that every single thing ticks every single box imaginable. But it just looks so utterly joyless. You think, would you want to go on holiday if one of the books you packed was Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein? I mean, I don't know. Would you? Or The Great Experiment, Why Diverse Democracies Fall Apart and How They Can Endure. And how they can endure. Sorry, yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
No, you're not reading that in a deck chair. In a deck chair, you're reading. I'll tell you what was a really good recommendation years ago. I remember dear Matt Snow. I remember once saying to him, I was about to go on holiday, and Matt was always good on books. I said, I want something to read on holiday. He said, there's a book by called Thomas Harris called Red Dragon. Of course, that was the first Hannibal Lecter book.
Oh, yeah.
And I read that on holiday. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Day of the Jackal. Those are the kind of things you want to read on holiday,
If you're reading Bob Mortimer's memoir, something like that. Or Lost in Music by Giles Smith being read for the 59th time.
So
that kind of stuff is brilliant.
We don't need no improvement.
No, we don't. But have you seen his music list? It's ridiculous, honestly. He's got the kind of standard stuff. He's got the kind of Prince, Al Green, Nina Simone,
tick,
Aretha Franklin, Dave Brubeck. That's fine. He's got the kind of popular vote stuff. Beyonce, Wyclef, Jack White, Harry Styles. And then he's got stuff that, I'm sorry, he cannot be listening to. Burner Boy, Wet Leg. I mean, Wet Leg. Is he really listening to Wet Leg?
Well, what are his kids, baby?
Well, Wet Leg, Fatboy Slim, Bad Bunny and Bomba Astereo. I don't know.
I don't think so.
That's a Colombian rap band with a Colombian rock band with an American rapper. Is he really sitting on a sun lounger and availing himself of that? I doubt it.
I think there was a time when he was regarded as the coolest man on the planet. And I think the more of these lists he puts out, the more he
thinks he does
that
try
reputation.
too hard.
Actually,
I know, I totally agree with you.
He doth try too hard.
Yeah.
Give it a rest, Obama.
The word podcast. Clearly, there is no plan.
Now, there are some podcasts that can't be bought. We can. It's quite simple.
Very easily.
Absolutely, really easily. So, we've made an offer. If you're one of our much valued Patreon supporters and you happen to also be involved in the production or marketing or whatever of some kind of desirable service, and we've in the past we've had the
pork pies.
Pork pies.
Sensational pork pie from Norfolk. Yeah.
Yes, but we also had the vegan snacks from Keith Adsley.
Oh, we have,
from St Albans and so forth. And now we're delighted to say we finally got a beer We're absolutely thrilled
This is
about this.
exciting. We're gonna open it on screen.
We're gonna open
carefully so it doesn't go all over the keyboard. Actually.
Okay, so shall I? I'm going to open mine.
Go on, I'm going for mine.
God.
Actually, very sweetly, Simon and Ange of the Ink Spot in Newbiggin by the sea in Northumberland also sent me a glass. Did you get a glass? I got a packet of peanuts. I got a full kit. Packet of peanuts. I got some beer mats.
I got beer mats. I got beer mats.
Good sound.
I got a woolly hat actually.
Good sound effect.
That's
great.
This beer is called Hold Fast. It's from the Ink Spot, and it's called. They describe it as light, fruity, and refreshing.
Oh, it is. That's cool. That's a summer ale.
It is.
Oh, very fruity. That's great. That's absolutely superb.
Oh, God, fantastic.
The perfect accompaniment for a P.G. Wodehouse novel, I'm saying.
Yes.
That's really nice. Light and musical. Yeah.
That's the Ink Spot, which is, I think it's fair to say, not quite a pub, isn't it? Because we talked to Simon in the past, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
It's kind of beer shop, isn't it? It's only open certain days of the week, and I don't think it's open until I think it closes at 10:00 at night, so they don't have any trouble with kind of rowdy customers
neighbours
drifting in from neighbouring pubs.
I just noticed on this note you sent me, you said, I thought you might appreciate a care package. I love that. This is a care package.
We do appreciate.
We do. So if anyone's got any amusing, and ideally, consumable goods they want to send, please do. Cheers.
So while we're enjoying that, let's pay tribute to one of the great heroes of Word in Your Ear, who passed away this last week. And who are we talking about? We're talking about the great Bernard Cribbins. And we use the word great advisedly, don't we, Mark, here?
Oh, we really do. I mean, it's funny. I was looking at all the obits, and I was genuinely upset because I just adored him as a kid. I mean, I absolutely adored him. And he's also been going for, active for 60, 70, very nearly 80 years. He started when he was 12, So everyone's got their own Bernard Cribbins. But it's interesting, he was described as the star of Doctor Who and Jackanory, in I think, by The Guardian. And it was the Wombles, the Carry On, the Railway Children. And it reminded you that what unbelievable versatility that guy had.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it incredible? Because he started, family very, very badly off, and he got a job when he was 12 in the local theatre. He started acting, and you just had to learn to be versatile. There's a great clip, which we've talked about before, of Norman Wisdom and Bruce Forsyth on stage doing a kind of song and dance routine. Do you remember when they played the drums?
Oh, God, yes.
It's absolutely, there might even be some juggling involved, like some slapsticks, incredible. And it's the same thing. He could do absolutely everything. He was that kind of soulful kind of non-comic turn in the Railway Children. He was in sci-fi movies. He did slapstick parts in films. He was in Hitchcock's Frenzy. He did lots of Shakespeare. And every time he was asked if he'd like to do some Shakespeare, he said, "I don't know. Can I see the script?" Which is a really good joke, isn't it? That's so funny. But also he did vaudeville. He used to come on, did it on the good old days, and do those amazing
He was
turns.
sensational.
Oh my God.
Honestly, I know we all used to hate the good old days when our parents used to love watching it. And now, if you see those clips, those people just got up on those boards and they did those things with no special effects, no great choreography or anything. And
a lot of it improvised.
It was raw talent, that was. He's remarkable on that. I've got to share with you, I posted a tweet saying that after he died, that I met him at something not that long ago. It was some kind of radio. I can't even remember what the thing was. He did loads of radio, and it was some drama or something. And it was Bernard Cribbins was one of the cast, and he was going to be there. And I thought I've just got to go to this thing just to be in the same room as Bernard Cribbins.
Absolutely.
And the end, as he was ducking out, I buttonholed him. I shook his hand. I just want you to thank you, for lifetime's worth of stuff, And he was very sweet. But here's the interesting thing. He was in a hurry because he had a gig to go to.
Of course.
Now, this is a guy in the latter half of his 80s at this stage. He was on his way to Nottingham, I think, to do something.
To get on stage.
And there was a saying in show business that if Cribbins isn't working, nobody's working.
That's great.
He was the kind of the bellwether. Anyway, I posted this on Twitter and somebody somebody could. Sadly, it's just called Just a Name. I do wish people use their names on Twitter. Anyway, it says, I was at a black tie event in Bristol. Back to the hotel bar afterwards. Somebody undid my bow tie, and I didn't know how to do it back up. Bernard was holding court in the corner, excused himself, came over, tied it back up for me, quick brush of my shoulder, and back he went.
Fantastic.
And the point I said,
multi-skilled.
no, but here's the point. That's what years in cabaret does for you.
Yeah.
You know, if you spend years in cabaret, a dinner jacket and a black tie are your basic props,
Basic kit, aren't they? Completely.
That's the sort of stuff that you did. And
we should mention also what he did, the great comedy records. I mean, they were phenomenal. I mean, you were saying the other day that he was the biggest selling artist on Parlophone
until the Beatles.
Is that right? I think he was. Because he had 3 singles that year. He had Right Said Fred, he had Hole in the Ground, Gossip Calypso. And I still contend, Hole in the Ground, which was, everyone always mentions that because Noel Coward, in his Desert Island Discs, said it was the greatest comedy record ever made. And he chose that out of all the things he wanted to keep. That was the one, wasn't it? And I think what's so amazing about that, well, lots of things. 1, it's under 2 minutes long, which is extraordinary. 2, it's full of those sound effects. 3, incredible melody and arrangement. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful comedy slapstick instruments, you know. And it tells the story, doesn't it? A brilliant story. In 1.5 minutes tells the story. It's the class conflict. You know, the working class guy digging the hole, the toff telling him not to dig it there. And based on the central gag, that people used to think that workmen just dug holes randomly without any purpose. Do you know what I mean? Just to give themselves some kind of employment. And the idea you could say, don't put the hole there, you should be putting it over there. You know? It was so brilliant. It's got some great lines in it. One line, he says, when the guy at the top with the bowler hat kind of gives him a hard time. He says, I gave him a look sort of sideways and I leaned on my shovel and sighed. Well, I lit me a fag and having took a drag, I replied. I mean, that is a brilliant line. Brilliant. Do you think? It's fantastic.
Well, he is brilliant, but also the other thing about it is a brilliant record. And that's where George Martin begins to do something that became really important with the Beatles. It's what you might call post-production.
Yeah,
is that the record wasn't finished when the singer had left the studio. That's when you started, and he put on those sound effects and all that kind of stuff later on. You know, so it's a piece of perfection. Both that record and Right Said Fred, absolute perfection.
Right Said Fred as well, because it's a very clever gag because that's also working class take the piss out of, because what the thing that they're moving must be a piano. You're never told what it is, but it's the thing what held the candles, is it, and the handles and all that, So it must be a piano. But in moving the piano, they completely destroy the toff's house and thoroughly enjoy doing it. It's just a genius idea.
So anyway, Bernard Cribbins and the ink spot of Newbiggin. Cheers.
Cheers. God bless you.
You're listening to the Word Podcast, where the time is whenever you want it to be.
Okay, it's been my birthday this week, Mark, and some of my kids have just been around, and one of them gave me this framed a press cutting.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
From Private Eye a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if anybody saw this. Spoof page in Private Eye, spoof news page. Thousands gather to worship ancient stones by our old rock correspondents, Mark Elder and Dave Hipworth. There we are.
I was very touched by that.
And a spoof story.
It's a bit like appearing in Sude's Corner or something. It's something that it's one of those great achievements you have to tick off in life, isn't it?
Is it just coincidence that appeared in Private Eye just after we'd been talking to Ian Hislop at the Chalk Valley Festival?
It might. It's possible, actually. Yeah. It did.
But anyway,
later, didn't it?
So there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And my children were sufficiently thrilled about it to cut it out and get it framed.
That's really nice.
So anyway, Bob Dylan. What were you saying about Bob Dylan?
Well, Dylan, it is 60 years ago on August the 2nd, next week, i.e. we're recording this on the Sunday, that Dylan changed his name legally by deed poll, which I think is a very significant event, actually.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Middle-class boy from Hibbing, Minnesota, whose dad had run a furniture and appliances store, gone to high school, kind of middle-class, wasn't he? Kind of lower middle-class, kind of, vaguely respectable background. Reinvented himself totally into this freewheeling Dust Bowl refugee in his 1920s clothes and his kind of a string belt, and reinvented a complete... He wrote his own press releases, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
When he signed up, he said he was going to write his own press releases. It was just all about circuses and riding boxcars and just, his whole... All he wanted to talk about in interviews was that the hot, as he says in his autobiography, he says the hot stories for me were from the 1920s, the sinking of the Titanic and things like that. He just totally freed himself from that idea that he came from this fairly conventional family in Hibbing. And I thought that was really interesting because there were a load of other people who did the same sort of thing by changing their name. Grace Slick. It's another one, I think. Grace Slick's dad was worked for an investment banking firm.
She was very prosperous.
Really prosperous. She went to all the poshest and most prestigious private schools, colleges, and then just reinvented herself totally as Grace Slick. Alice Cooper, you could say the same. Marilyn Manson, Heritage Christian School, Sid Vicious. These people who just became somebody completely different or legitimised being someone different. Freddie Mercury, Meatloaf. Iggy Pop's a really good example. Iggy Pop was actually quite a straight kid, I think.
Yeah.
Right up until the end, Ron Asherton always said that he hung out with all the kids that wore chinos and cashmere sweaters and penny loafers. He was kind of well behaved. There's lots of pictures of him with button-down tab collar shirts and ties and getting lots of awards for educational excellence. And then just suddenly became Iggy Pop and went off at a tangent.
On the subject of Dylan, do we know if he told his parents that he was going to change his name?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because that's about as kind of difficult a thing you could confront a parent with.
Yeah, I'm dumping the family name.
I've decided...
And you have to explain why you were doing that.
I'm dumping your name.
Your name? Yeah. The name you gave me.
I'm not going to be called Tom Ellen anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to be called Tom Mercury.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how well you'd take it.
No, I think you'd be shaken.
Anyway, well, we're talking about Bob Dylan. I happened to hear a Bob Dylan song this week. I hear a Bob Dylan song most weeks. And it's a song I kind of quite like. But, just occasionally one of these things falls upon the ear in such a fashion that you think, what? What are those words about? And there's always a part of me that I kind of, I look quizzical when people start talking about, rock musicians getting Nobel Prizes for literature and so forth, knowing the way that rock lyrics are knocked out, And this is a kind of classic case, and I'm going to read it to you, Mark Ellen, okay?
Okay.
You will instantly recognise it because it starts as follows. Oh, the streets of Rome are filled with rubble. Ancient footprints are everywhere. You could almost think that you're seeing double on a cold, dark night on the Spanish Stair. Now, the streets of Rome are not filled with rubble, are they?
No.
They're not at all. They're filled with Fiats, if you're looking for something, Got to hurry on back to my hotel room where I got me a date with a pretty little girl from Greece. That's not a date, is it? If she's waiting for you in your hotel room, this does not qualify as a date, does it?
No,
it's what used to be known as on a promise, which is slightly different thing. Anyway, she promised she'd be there with me when I paint my masterpiece. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, the hours we spent inside the Colosseum dodging lions and wasting time. Oh, those mighty kings of the jungle. I could hardly stand to see 'em. Well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it sure has been a long, hard drive.
I can see the rhyme that's coming.
And the single worst middle eight in the history of Bob Dylan is coming up. Sailing round the world in a dirty gondola, Oh, to be back in the land of Coca-Cola.
Oh, Lord.
You know, for goodness sake.
No, that's poor, isn't it? That jars.
It's terrible.
There's a couple that I always used to know me. One was a tiny one on the otherwise absolutely flawless John Wesley Harding album, where he says, as I went out one morning, he says, "Depart from me this moment. I told her with my voice."
With my voice.
With my voice. I told her with my voice. Because he just wanted to rhyme with, I don't wish to, but you have no choice. That is weak. I told her with my voice. Sorry, that's bad. There's another one on Bob Dylan's 115th Dream, where he says, I asked the captain what his name was and how come he didn't drive a truck. And he said his name was Columbus. And he just said, good luck. He's just working back from good luck.
Absolutely.
Oh, dear.
It's, you know, there's always a part of every Bob Dylan lyric where you get in the third verse where he's just thinking, will this do? Can I get to the end? You know,
will this do?
Have I finished? You know.
I know. No, one more is that if you ever want to go back and revisit some of the lowest points, I think it's man gave names to all the animals. Do you remember that? And there's a verse about each animal. And one of them says, he saw an animal leaving a muddy trail, real dirty face and a curly tail. He wasn't too small and he wasn't too big. I think I'll call it a pig. I think this can't be real. This is the man who wrote, oh, good Lord. I mean, Blind Willie McTell. Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Anyway, we all have bad days.
The Word Podcast. 2 cocoa tins and a piece of string.
And we're joined by Alex Gold. Hello, Alex. Any other business? Hi. Hello. Alex is on an ocean liner off the coast of Alaska, giving the population his world-famous John Lennon. Not too late to book, ladies and gentlemen, for next year. No, I'm not taking the mickey.
Not remotely. I'm still so impressed that someone can make a very gainful living. You go out in the morning and pretending to be a Beatle in a band all day.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
So we always turn to Alex for we want the mysteries of being in a rock band to be explained to us in some way. And one thing that crossed our path this week was the strange sight of a member of Pearl Jam doing something that I thought had kind of completely gone by the wayside years ago, which is smashing a guitar on the stage at the end of a tour. Is that right, Alex? Was that? I think it was in Amsterdam or something like this. Can you tell us anything further?
Well, all I know about smashing guitars really is that once upon a time it was the ultimate act of intellectual rebellion. There was an element of artiness about it, wasn't there? Because Pete Townshend's whole shtick was influenced by, was it Gustav Metzger, the auto-destructive artist?
Oh, very good.
Auto-destruction, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So he'd use corrosive paint, for example, and all that kind of carry on. And Townsend was trying to emulate that, but in the musical sphere. So there was an element of, of braininess about it, but also it was a big middle finger to the man, wasn't it?
The man.
Yeah.
But in the 21st century, it just kind of feels like a waste of trees, which we're trying to save. There doesn't seem to be any point at all. When you see a very well-off musician smashing a guitar, you just think, you don't really think an awful lot about it.
But what are they doing? I mean, nobody is smashing a valuable instrument on stage, are they? Is anybody doing that?
I don't know. I think that was a cheap guitar. Look, you won't catch any up-and-coming bands smashing their equipment on stage.
No,
let's put it that way. Someone like Pearl Jam, who can sell out an arena, it's not going to hurt them too much. And there's still probably a part of them that thinks it's a major act of subversion. But to my eyes, at least, it just looks a little bit pathetic. It's, especially when you're past a certain point in life.
This is it. That's the thing here. We have to keep reminding ourselves that the members of Pearl Jam are in the mid-50s. Isn't that right?
There must be a moment where it's undignified.
The members of Pearl Jam have all at some stage in their life had to take a teenager into a room and say, "Now look, pull yourself together."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or tell them where babies come from, or all those rites of passage that you go through when you become an adult. You know, and it's very difficult to go back to get smashing a guitar, isn't it? After that, it's the thing that struck me.
There's something a little bit ungainly about it after you pass the age of 25. I feel it's not.
Yeah,
It's not quite right.
So you've
but-
never done it, Alex. I want to know if is it
Oh, yeah.
physically. Oh, you've broken a
No,
guitar.
you have.
Oh, yeah, I went through a massive phase of it. So when I discovered Tony Fledger's Keith Moon book, in the pages of Q actually, and I went to W.H. Smith and I would sit in the aisle every week and read a chapter while my friends went to the skate park. And then I borrowed £10 off my friend Dickie Island so I could buy it. And I read the rest of the book at home, became obsessed with The Who. and I started smashing up drum kits. That was the first thing. And after every gig, I'd boot whatever drum kit I was playing over. I remember playing Stratford upon Avon bandstand once with my school band, booting the guy whose drum kit I was
But
using.
were you very
drum kit
careful to
over.
do it with causing the minimum amount of damage? Because I read something about Pete Townshend. I think Pete Townshend is the first, but I think he invented it actually, didn't he? Isn't that right?
Yeah,
in the
accidentally. So it was
Railway
at the
Tavern
Railway
in
Hotel.
1964 it
You
was.
put it through a way,
And he put it through put the neck of the guitar, it's a
Ceiling.
very low ceiling, through the
And
ceiling,
the
and then
crowd
just.
started cheering, and he went,
Yeah.
"Oh, hang on, there's something in this." And,
Something in
and
this.
he started doing it regularly.
But from then on,
but
I think
what
he
he
was
ended up
very
doing
careful
was-
not to break the necks of the guitar. He'd only break the side bits, which could be repaired.
Yeah,
that
so
right?
he could bolt them all back together.
Yeah.
So he did a very, very methodic way. I mean, I was too young and too stupid to realise, really. So I just, all that was going through my brain was that I am being Keith Moon. And
Yeah.
when I look back now, I'm kind of horrified, really. I mean, I never meant to, to cause any harm, of course. But you just don't think when you're younger. But
I was reading-
I went through the phrase with. Go on.
I was reading not long ago about when the Who first went to the United States. They were on, as were many British groups who went to the United States in the mid-60s. They were put on these bills that would play theatres in New York where they would do like 7 shows a day or something like that. It would start at lunchtime and go on to the evening. And there'd be about 6 acts, and all of them would do 2 numbers or 3 numbers or whatever. And the Who were one of these acts, they were, and I think they did 3 numbers, and one of them was My Generation, which of course had to climax with the destruction of the drum kit, with the drum kit pretty much coming off the stage, falling apart.
And then you're back on again in a few hours.
But absolutely no, because what happened was that then they would start again the next show, and so I don't know. The Caravels or Paul Revere and the
Yeah.
Raiders would be coming on next. And in the background would be Keith Moon frantically putting back together the drum kit that he'd blown apart in order to be able to do the same
Exactly
thing
the same thing again.
in 15 minutes' time when they came along again.
So showbiz.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all showbiz.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.